10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 240. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 240 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. For any of you that are joining us for the first time, my name is Nick Manella. I'm the creator and host of this show. And for everybody out there that has been listening for a while, welcome back in. This week we're going to continue our series on the minor blues. We're going to make things a little bit more complicated this week, and that's going to result in a little bit more of an interesting sound to your solos. So before we jump into the actual show, I want to thank some new patrons of the podcast. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, we use Patreon to support this show. If you don't know what Patreon is, it is a great way to directly support the creators that you enjoy and you feel like you get something out of their creations. And this is a listener-supported show, so this is how we keep bringing you episodes week in and week out. You do get a PDF and audio examples with every single episode, and when you join up, you get access to all of the back episodes with PDFs as well. So if you'd like to join, you can go to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up, instant access to all those materials. Got some brand new people to thank. I'd like to thank a new $3 patron. Thank you to Istan. And I've got 3 new $5 patrons. Thank you to Bruce, Peter, and another Peter. So thank you guys so much for joining up, and for all those people that have been with us for the long haul. Thank you so much for being a part of the community. You're the reason that this keeps going. We've got over 300 people over there that really enjoy the rewards that come with being a patron. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get signed up today. So last week we talked about the basic minor blues progression in the key of C minor, and we just did an overview of what's going on, how it differs from the major blues, and I had you learn a melody. I had you learn the melody to Mr. PC, maybe one of the most popular minor blues melodies that anybody plays. So hopefully what you've done is you've learned that melody, you've memorized it, and you've gotten used to the sound of the minor blues progression. That's going to be the biggest thing that I want you to accomplish before we jump into the next level that we're going to go over today. So we're going to talk about 2 things that we can do that are really going to add an extra dimension to our playing over this. We're going to reharmonize the progression in 2 different places. So let's start with the first one. The first place we're going to look is measure 2. And what we notice with the minor blues is that we have 3 measures of just the one chord happening at the beginning of the progression. And it's fine to just play over that one chord for the first 3 measures before you play that 5 of 4 and you get ready to modulate to the key of the 4. But there is something that we can do in there that's going to add a little bit of motion and a little bit of interest to our solo over that first section of the form. So what we're going to do in measure 2 is we're going to throw in a 2-5-1, a 1 measure 2-5-1. And if you're looking at your PDF from this week, I have those new chords written in, and I've highlighted them in red so you could see exactly where I'm putting that little cadence, and you can practice it. So let's check out what the first 4 bars sounds like, where we're just staying on the one chord until we play that 5 of 4. So here's what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could hear that 5 chord happening at the very end there. Now, here's what it sounds like with our brand new reharmonization. Listen for the second measure and listen to how this kind of propels us into the third measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can hear it just kind of adds some harmonic motion, and When you're improvising over the top of this, it adds even more because it just gives you something to do without having to work too hard. Now, here's the caveat for the stuff I'm going to show you in this episode. Let the reharmonization do the work for you. Don't play something super harmonically complicated. You're going to hear me play examples later on in the episode, and I'm just trying to do basic things. The chords are what's interesting. We do not have to do the fanciest thing that we can possibly think of over the chords. We just need to let the listener know that we're playing that progression there. Okay, so that's a caveat to all this stuff, and that should actually make your life a lot easier. You don't have to do the work. The chords do the work for you. Okay, so the other spot that we are changing in today's episode is the very last measure. So last week we had just a 5 chord turning back around into the 1 chord in the last measure. And that's a very traditional, very acceptable thing to do. But what we're going to actually do this week is we're going to mimic the turnaround that happens in measure 9 again in measure 12. So what do we have in measure 9? What's the turnaround that we typically use in a minor blues? We use flat 6 to 5 to 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to condense that chord progression and we're going to throw it in measure 12 as well. So now in measure 12, you will notice highlighted in red on your PDF, you have flat 6 to 5 to 1. So let's do the same thing that we did with the other spot. Let's hear what the old one sounded like, and then let's hear what the reharmonization sounds like. So here is starting in measure 9 with the old chords. So this is going to be flat 6, 5, 1, and then it's just going to be a regular old 5 chord when we turn around to the top. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So great progression, nothing wrong with that. But now check out how cool it sounds when we throw that flat 6 in there again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to my ears, that just sounds so much more interesting. And it's kind of cool because we already heard that sound. So it's familiar to our ears and it sort of propels us in a really important way back into the top of the form so that our next chorus is going to really just get off on a really interesting note because we're playing that flat 6, 5 at the end. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a backing track and I am going to play a little bit of saxophone because you just heard the piano playing it, just the chord progression. Now I want you to hear what it sounds like when I'm actually using this reharmonization when I'm soloing. So really listen for measure 2 and measure 12. Those are the 2 spots that I really want you to zone in on when you're actually listening to me play this. And you could decide whether you like this stuff or not. I personally really enjoy these 2 reharmonization points. All right, let's jump into a couple choruses of solo. So you can really hear that it adds another dimension to the solo in just those two spots, you know? And of course, I'm observing every other place that we talked about, and I'm trying to really reflect the changes in my playing. But I think that those two spots add a lot. Now, the good news is there's plenty of other places to do this, and we're going to go over those in the later episodes this month. So stick around for that, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Your assignment for this week is to really try to reflect those two places in the minor blues. You know, put on a backing track, start playing along, and try to insert those two. Remember, don't be complicated about it. Start by just being really, really simple and see what kind of sounds you can get, what kind of results you can get. And then later on, you can, of course, venture into more complicated melodic material. But I really want to stress that. Don't go overboard. Just try to get comfortable with the new changes, with the reharmonization. So that about does it for this week. If you'd like to get the sheet with those two different places on it and some thoughts from me on what you should be doing when you're practicing, go to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today. For a small amount of money, you can get a ton in return. All right, everybody, hope you're doing well out there. Hope you're staying safe and healthy, and we will talk to you next week with a brand new episode. Have a good one. Bye.